Before you dive into the story, hit that like button and subscribe to discover the true history that Rome's emperors wanted hidden forever. You won't find this in your textbooks. Rome's greatest gladiator walked out of the arena covered in blood and glory. 10,000 people roared his name. He defeated 5 men in combat. He was a hero, a god to the masses. But what happened behind the marble walls that night would make even the hardened citizens of Rome look away in shame. This isn't the story of heroes and honor that Hollywood shows you. This is the dark truth about what happened to the women who were forced to watch and suffer after every victorious gladiator battle. A truth so brutal that Rome's emperors spent centuries trying to erase it from history. And today, we're bringing it back to light. Why this works, asterisk, asterisk, you're immediately hooked by a contradiction. Heroes were supposed to be noble, but what if they weren't? Your curiosity is burning to know what really happened in those shadows. Rome in the year 79 AD. The Colosseum stood as the greatest spectacle the world had ever seen. It had been open for only 5 years, but already to become the center of Roman power and entertainment. 3 times a week, thousands of spectators flooded into the massive arena. They came to see death. They came to see victory. They came to see heroes become immortal. But few people talk about the other people in the Colosseum that day, the ones who had no choice about being there. Among the spectators sat women from conquered territories. Some were prisoners of war. Others were slaves. Many were the sisters, mothers, and wives of men who had died in battle. They were forced to watch the games as a reminder of Roman dominance. They had to sit and witness the violence that had destroyed their families. The main character, Livia asterisk asterisk. Livia was 24 years old, with dark hair and intelligent eyes. She had been born in Egypt, in a wealthy merchant's family. But when Rome conquered her city, everything changed. Her father was killed in the fighting. Her brothers were enslaved. And Livia, beautiful Livia, was taken to Rome as a prize. Her official title was entertainer. But everyone knew the truth. She was a captive. For 2 years, she survived in the houses of wealthy Roman officials. She'd learned to smile when she wanted to scream. She'd learned to be invisible when invisibility kept you alive. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for what the empire was about to make her witness. The arena's hidden secrets. What Rome's historians never wrote about were the special games. These weren't ordinary gladiator fights. After the public games ended each day, after the crowds at the Colosseum, the gates were locked. Roman soldiers stood guard. And then came the real games, the ones the empire wanted buried. These games featured victorious gladiators and women prisoners. It was entertainment for the empire's wealthiest and most powerful men. It was a place where the rules of normal society vanished. The emperor himself sometimes attended in secret chambers high above the arena, hidden from view. The day everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning when Livia was brought to the underground chambers beneath the Colosseum. A Roman officer had come to the house where she worked. He didn't explain why he needed her. In Rome's system, you didn't ask questions. You obeyed. The underground of the Colosseum was a maze. There were corridors she never knew existed. Chambers carved into the stone. Rooms with no windows and only one exit, the one guarded by soldiers. Livia was placed in a large stone cell with 11 other women. They ranged in age from 17 to 40. Some were Egyptian like her. Others came from Judea, Syria, and provinces she'd never heard of. One older woman, named Sophia, whispered the truth in the darkness. We're here for the games after the games. They only bring us here when they need us for special entertainment. Livia's stomach turned to ice. The cruelty begins. As the day progressed, soldiers came with food and water, barely enough to survive on. Then they came with fine clothes, rich fabrics, gold jewelry. They were being dressed up, made beautiful. Why? Livia asked Sophia. So, we look beautiful when we're presented. Sophia said quietly, her voice hollow. The victor deserves the finest prize. That's what they tell themselves. One of the younger women started crying. A soldier heard her and entered the cell. He didn't say a word. He just looked at her until the tears stopped. No one wanted to know what that look meant. The afternoon dragged on like an eternity. From their cell, they could hear the roar of the crowds above. The public games were happening. Thousands of people were watching men fight. They didn't know what was really about to begin. The moment of truth. As the sun began to set, the sound of the crowd faded. Then came the silence. That silence was worse than the noise. It meant the public was gone. It meant the real games were about to start. Soldiers opened the cell doors. They pointed to the corridor. The women had to walk. Livia's legs felt like they would give out beneath her. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to fight, to do something. But she had learned the most important lesson of survival in Rome. Resistance meant pain. Cooperation might mean something slightly less terrible. They were led into a smaller arena chamber, a private space carved inside the Colosseum's heart. Torches burned on the walls. Oil lamps cast dancing shadows. And around the edges, Rome's most powerful men sat watching. Senators, military commanders, wealthy merchants. Some of them she recognized from the houses where she'd worked. In the center of the arena stood 7 gladiators. They were the victors from the day's public games. They were still covered in the blood of their defeated opponents. Their bodies gleamed with sweat and power. One of them looked directly at Livia. He smiled. 20 years later, a young historian named Marcus was researching in the archives of the Roman library. He was supposed to be studying documents about military campaigns. Instead, he found something that made his blood run cold. It was a hidden scroll tucked away in a section labeled Restricted Imperial Records. It was a confession. The scroll was written in the hand of a dying gladiator named Titus. Titus had been famous, one of Rome's greatest fighters. But at the end of his life, racked with illness and approaching death, he decided to tell the truth. His words described exactly what happened after those private games. He described the helplessness of the women. He described orders from the empire's leadership. He described how it was all covered up afterward. But more importantly, his scroll mentioned names. Specific women who had survived. Specific dates. Specific evidence. One name appeared multiple times, Livia of Egypt. Marcus knew he'd discovered something dangerous. The Roman government spent considerable resources keeping this history hidden. Speaking about it could mean his life. But Marcus made a choice. He decided that some truths were worth the risk. The hidden survivor. Marcus spent months researching. He learned that Livia had survived those private games. More than that, she had escaped Rome entirely. Using networks of sympathetic scholars and former slaves, he tracked her story. Livia had eventually been freed by a wealthy Roman sympathizer who was horrified by what she'd endured. She'd lived her remaining years in a small village in Greece, never speaking about her time in Rome. She died just 8 years before Marcus found the scroll. But Livia had left something behind, her own journal, hidden, protected by descendants who knew what she'd suffered. When Marcus finally read Livia's words, written in her own hand, describing what she and other women experienced, he understood the magnitude of Rome's crime. The empire hadn't just enslaved these women. It hadn't just forced them to watch violence. It had created a system of controlled torture, hidden from public view, designed to break their spirits completely. And then it tried to erase the evidence. The reckoning. Marcus made copies of both scrolls. He hid them in multiple locations across the empire. He sent word to sympathetic scholars in distant provinces. Slowly, carefully, the truth began to spread. It took years, but eventually, the whispers became louder. Senators who'd attended the private games began to feel the weight of public knowledge. Young people who'd never thought about the games as anything but entertainment began to ask uncomfortable questions. The emperor at the time tried to suppress the information, but it was too late. The knowledge was everywhere now. In the end, the gladiator games themselves came under intense scrutiny. What had been celebrated as entertainment and proof of Roman strength became something people couldn't defend anymore. The games continued for a while, but they were changed. The private games ended completely. Women were no longer forced to attend. The system that had hidden such brutality was exposed to sunlight, and like all darkness, it began to die. Livia's story, her suffering, her survival, her courage in eventually telling the truth, became a symbol of resistance against an empire that thought it was above accountability. what Rome tried to hide. Here's what the historians and emperors of Rome didn't want you to know. The greatest civilizations are often built on hidden horrors. The beauty of Rome's architecture, the grandeur of its culture, the fame of its heroes, all of it was built on systems of oppression that hurt the most vulnerable people. Power always tries to hide its cruelty. That's the pattern we see throughout history. But here's the more important lesson. The women who survived, they preserved the truth. Asterisk, asterisk, they told their stories to people they trusted. They kept journals. They passed down memories. They refused to let Rome completely erase what happened. And eventually, the truth emerged. The universal message. This isn't just about ancient Rome. This is about every empire, every system, every organization that tries to hide what happens behind closed doors. The pattern is always the same. Power is concentrated. Vulnerable people are exploited. The system covers it up. Silence is demanded. But truth-tellers emerge. The real heroes in this story weren't the gladiators. Asterisk, asterisk, they weren't the emperors. The real heroes were people like Livia, who survived, who remembered, who eventually told what happened. It took tremendous courage. It took speaking against the most powerful empire in the world. But she did it. What this means for us today. When we look at history like this, we're not supposed to feel comfortable. We're supposed to ask ourselves, what systems in our own world operate in darkness? What truths are being hidden by powerful people? Who are the vulnerable ones whose stories aren't being told? History shows us that light always eventually reaches the darkness. Truth always eventually emerges. But only if people like you and like me refuse to accept the official story when we know something else is true. Livia's story reminds us that standing up for truth, even when it's dangerous, even when it's difficult, is what separates justice from cruelty. Rome was magnificent. It built incredible things. But its greatness couldn't hide the fact that it hurt people. And that hurt had to be accounted for. We owe it to people like Livia to remember her story. We owe it to speak truth, even when it's dangerous. And we owe it to future generations to build systems that don't require such darkness to operate. Asterisk, asterisk. Final call to action. This story shocked you for a reason. Because it reveals a truth that power wanted hidden. Asterisk, asterisk. If this video opened your eyes about the darker side of history that we're never taught about, asterisk, asterisk, like this video and subscribe now. Asterisk, asterisk, hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that challenges what you thought you knew. Leave a comment below. Have you ever discovered a historical truth that completely changed how you saw something? Share your story. Your insight might inspire someone else to question the official narrative. Asterisk, asterisk. The truth matters. History matters. And the stories of people like Livia matter. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video where we reveal more hidden truths from history that powerful people didn't want us to find. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and never stop asking questions.